what is chemistry, right? We're in a chemistry class. If you had to define, based on your previous experience or lack thereof with chemistry, what would you say? If you had to define it in a short sentence, a concise sentence, or maybe two, what would you say chemistry is? Is it how well you get along with someone? You have good chemistry with somebody? You get along with? Well, yeah, that's technically correct, but it's not in terms of science. The study of reactions. What are reactions? You just read it? Okay. That's fair. It's in front of you. Anybody else? What do you think chemistry is? If you had to define it. The study of matter. So I was just going to say that. So thank you for preempting me. So we can say chemistry is the study of matter. So when we say it's the study of matter, well, what is it about matter? Are we studying? Well, we can think about the properties of matter. And properties is just another word for characteristic. So the study of matter, its properties or characteristics, but also what's at the heart of chemistry are the changes that matter undergoes. Okay, and then that would sort of tie into what you were saying, the study of reactions, right? Reactions involve changes. And then the last part to the definition of chemistry, which often gets forgotten, is what accompanies those changes, which is the energy. Associated with those changes. All right, so the study of matter, its properties or its characteristics, the changes that matter undergoes, reactions, and then the energy that's associated with those changes. Is energy being used up? Is it being given off? Are there other types of energy changes occurring? And that's what chemistry is, right? So it's it's a medium-sized sentence in terms of its length, but it encompasses all of what we'll be looking at in this class. So for instance, you do chemistry on a regular basis without thinking about it, right? You ate something for breakfast this morning, it didn't agree with your stomach, so you take an antacid tablet. You stick it in to some water, chemistry happens. There are chemical changes, there are changes that are happening to the tablet there in that example. Can you think of another maybe change or chemical change or reaction that's occurring, like right now, for instance? Where is chemistry occurring right now? Exhaling carbon dioxide. Where is the carbon dioxide coming from? Okay, so the stuff that you ate, if you ate something, some of us don't eat for breakfast, but let's say you had some toast or something for breakfast this morning, right? Your body is breaking that food down through chemical changes, and as a byproduct of that, you're releasing a bunch of carbon dioxide that you're breathing out. Right? And that's happening right now, by the way, right? You're not thinking about it. I'm gonna think really hard about digesting that piece of bread. No, your body's already doing that on its own, right? And it's giving you energy that allows you to sit there and take notes and not fall asleep in class. All right, so chemistry is a study of substances in terms of its composition, right? What is it made up of? What is that toast made up of? Well, it's carbohydrates, and maybe there's some sugars, which are essentially the same thing. How does it look? Right? How is it put together? Are all of the components, sort of clumped together, or are they more spread out? How are they all connected to each other? What are some of the characteristics does it have? Right? Is it a solid? Is it maybe a liquid? And then finally, how does it behave with other things? Right? So how does the bread that you ate this morning, how does that react when it gets into your digestive system? And how does that generate energy? Right? That all involves what the study of chemistry is. So we define chemistry as a study of matter, right? And you may have thought to yourself, well, what is matter? And does matter matter? Let's answer the second question first. Does matter matter? Yes or no? Yes, it does. And what do you think matter is? We can define matter as anything that has mass and occupies space. So anything that we can measure the mass of, anything that takes up space or volume, that's what we consider matter. So can you think of some examples of matter, something that has mass and takes up space? Raise your hand if you can think of a or an example of matter. Yeah. Sorry? Air? Is that what you said? Air? The stuff you're breathing in right now? Does it take up space? Yeah, it takes up all the space around you. And you may not think about it, but yes, it does have mass. Right? We're concerned of the component of air that we actually use, which is oxygen, is the most important component of air, but it is matter. Any other examples of matter? Everything else? Okay, can you be a little more specific? Give me one specific example of everything else. The table. What about the stuff on the table? The paper, the pen, the book, the computer. What about the things sitting at the table? You, the chair, right? So essentially everything. So we can say then, in a sort of a non-technical way, or non-scientific way, matter is the stuff of the universe. Right? Which essentially means everything around us, but also everything in us. Right? The blood in your veins, that's an example of matter. And that's made up of even smaller types of matter. So with the example that we saw before, that the antacid tablet itself, the water is matter, the oxygen we breathe in, the carbon dioxide that we breathe out. So we're, on the whole, we are made up of matter as well. We're surrounded by matter. And studying matter is what chemistry is about, right? So when you get to your biology classes and you study how the respiratory system works, or how the muscle system, you're actually studying chemistry. We call it biology because it relates to a biological system, but it's actually chemistry you're doing. And you have to know, right? You have to have that foundation of chemistry to understand what's happening in those processes. So oftentimes, when we study chemistry, sometimes, when I ask other students, they say chemistry is a study of chemicals. When you hear the term chemical, does that bring to mind good things or bad things when you hear the term chemical? Chemicals you typically associate with being either harmful, right? You don't usually associate the word chemical as being beneficial. Well, the truth is, what a chemical is, well, you find chemicals all over the place, right? A chemical is just another name for a substance that have the same composition and characteristics wherever they are found. So yes, your toothpaste is made up of a bunch of chemicals that are responsible for doing different things in the toothpaste, but you are also made up of chemicals. Water is a chemical. Right? It has the same composition and the same properties regardless of where you find it, whether you find it in your sink, whether you find it in the ocean, or whether you find it in the sky. It still is water, H2O, and it has the same properties. It's considered a chemical, right? So oftentimes you hear the term chemical, you think, well, chemicals are bad. No. Without chemicals, right, we wouldn't have the life that we experience today. It's actually good. But some of the effects of certain chemicals can be bad. All right, so for instance, in your toothpaste, and this is a sort of a good way to introduce you to the fact that, you know, when you use any sort of consumer product, you know, whether it's toothpaste or whether you buy bread at the grocery store, or you purchase whatever, you know, from the grocery store, it's always a good idea to take a look at the ingredient label to see what exactly is it that you're using. What chemicals or substances are actually in that product. Do you look at the ingredient label in the stuff that you eat or drink? All right, sometimes the names on those things are like tongue twisters. They're like, you know, really, really long, and half the time you don't know what they mean. Well, I guarantee you after this class, you're going to know what some of those things actually mean in terms of whether they're sugars or lipids or fats or proteins, for instance, or whether there are other types of compounds or substances. So, for example, in your toothpaste, let's choose one here. This last one, called methyl salicylate. Right? This is actually a very, very, very common substance or chemical that you find in many things. That's actually the substance. It's classified as a thing known as an ester, and it's responsible for the taste or flavor of wintergreen. So anything that has that wintergreen flavor in it is going to contain methyl salicylate, right? So if you have I'm going to bring my chewing gum, but if you look at your chewing gum that's wintergreen flavor, you'll see methyl salicylate on it. Very, very common ingredient that's used. Question? And then there are other things here that are added to toothpaste to give it its characteristic properties, right? So the flavor here really doesn't do a whole lot, right? All it does, it makes it smell good. It makes your breath smell good, or not bad, I guess. But the sodium fluorophosphate, right? This is actually what we take advantage of in the toothpaste to actually protect our teeth, right? It contains fluoride in it, in this form. And it helps harden the teeth itself. The first one here, calcium carbonate, that's also a very common substance that has a very gritty feel to it, and that actually helps the abrasive action when you scrub your teeth this way and that way to help loosen some of the solids and plaque and stuff that you have in your teeth. All right, calcium carbonate is also found in things like chalk and limestone and marble. Very, very common. So lots of different things in something as simple as toothpaste. All right, let's do a quick check here. Which of the following contains chemicals? So we'll do a quick poll by just a show of hands. Let's start at the bottom. Does breakfast cereal contain chemicals? Raise your hand for yes. Yes. Okay. Does milk contain chemicals? Yes. Okay, so breakfast cereal, there's milk. Does fruit contain chemicals? What's a chemical that you would find in fruit? Let's pick a fruit. Apple. Sugars, yeah, different types of sugars like sucrose or glucose. In apples, there's a bunch of water in it as well, right? Just mentioned water is a chemical. What about sunlight? Does sunlight contain chemicals? Yes? What's the chemical in sunlight? So the sunlight itself, right, is actually a form of energy, right? And the energy that comes from the sun that hits the stuff in the plant and the plant take that energy and they convert it to other forms of energy. So the sunlight itself actually is not a chemical. It's just a form of energy. Right? And we'll take a look at that process actually that you mentioned, which is called photosynthesis. So plants take the energy from the sun, and they take that energy and they convert it to sugars that are in the fruits and other things that you find in the plant.